The dark and deadly dungeons of Fear and Hunger present many choices to players, which heavily affect their playthrough, and there are multiple endings you can achieve. The end you receive is ultimately determined by the characters you have recruited and have remained alive during your treacherous journey, and a few key decision points. There are 5 main endings you can get on the 2 base difficulty modes of Fear and Hunger and Terror and Starvation. However, playing on hard mode will allow you to get character-specific S endings, which are exclusive to this mode and require you to complete special conditions. Throughout the 9 different endings of the game, you are never explicitly told which endings are canonical and carry over to the second game of Fear and Hunger to Termina. With over 350 years passing in the game's world between the 2 entries, there is much information we don't gain insight to, but by going through all of the books, character interactions, and backstories presented in Fear and Hunger 2, we are able to piece together most of the puzzle of Fear and Hunger's timeline. With many of the endings being canonical, they affect one another in multiple ways. This, added with a few red herrings, has caused there to be some confusion and debate among the Fear and Hunger fanbase surrounding a few key components of the canon timeline. In this video, I will walk through each ending in Fear and Hunger, explaining what happens in the ending and how to achieve it, as well as detail which ones are canonical with evidence from Fear and Hunger to Termina. Note, this will contain heavy spoilers for both Fear and Hunger games, so you have been warned. The first ending we will be looking at is Ending A, the God of Fear and Hunger. This is often considered the main storyline ending for Fear and Hunger due to the lore revelations surrounding it and the major impact it has on the world of the second game. To achieve this ending, you must save the girl character from her cage in the starting basement area and have her in your party as you enter the gauntlet area through the God of the Depths mouth. This area can be accessed by cutting open all 3 God of the Depths hearts throughout the dungeon. One is located in the level 7 catacombs, one in the deeper thicket area, and the last one is in the present version of the Golden Temple in Mahabra, which can be accessed by defeating the Tormented One, Valtiel the Enlightened One, and the Skin Granny, which will cause Nilvan the Endless One to give you her soul if you agree to take the girl to the bottom of the gauntlet. You will then need to defeat the nameless figurine to make your way inside the temple, where the last God of the Depths heart is found at the bottom. We find her wish is due to the girl being her daughter, with Lagard, the man of prophecy, being her father, which resulted in her being born with the soul of the Ancient One. After taking her to the bottom of the gauntlet, we see Nilvan's true plan as the girl begins to morph into a monstrous creature, ultimately ascending to become the God of Fear and Hunger. After winning the battle, the player is transported to the level 10 of the dungeon, where we come face to face with the realized version of the God. Here, she acknowledges our suffering and gives us a merciful end. Nilvan's goal was to create a god that could rival the power of the old gods and bring humanity into a new age. We see after the creation of the God of Fear and Hunger, humanity was spurned by their base instinct of fear and kept momentum going forward by their hunger. This resulted in them adapting and evolving from the suffering they had endured up to this point. The God of Fear and Hunger came to be worshipped by many in this age. As mankind advanced to the modern world we see in Fear and Hunger to Termina. This period of transition became known as the Cruel Age. We know this ending is canonical, as the God of Fear and Hunger is a god talked about at length in the second game's lore, even though she has since become a more obscure god to many. We even see her referenced in historical works, as we can read about her in the 4 Ages of History book, which details her creation and influence on humanity during the Cruel Ages. Ending B, the older one, has the exact same method to be acquired as Ending A, but you will need to not have the girl in your party when you make it to the bottom of the gauntlet. Now, you will come face to face with the traces of Grogorath, the god of destruction. Despite being an infinitesimally small fraction of the old god's original strength, the Traces is one of the hardest, if not the hardest boss in the entire game. If Nasra is in your party, a special scene will occur where he rejoices at finally finding part of Grogorath, and that today is his day. The old god immediately smites him with fire, reducing the floating head to scorched ash. I've also had this bug multiple times, and the scene with Nasra will play out even if he isn't in your party. Regardless if he is or isn't, after the fight, the Traces of the old god will share knowledge with you, letting you know the old gods have long since abandoned the world of man, and only their fragments still remain. He then offers to share the true form and shape of the world, which humans were never meant to see. No matter which answer you pick, the brief exposure to eldritch knowledge causes causes your sanity and mind to collapse, as the madness destroys you from the inside out. This is the bleakest ending, as we are told we never escape the dungeons, and no one hears from us ever again. However, we do know a version of this ending is canon, not for any of the main characters, but for our friend Nasra. In Fear and Hunger 2 Termina, Osa the Yellow Mage actually travels to the dungeons of Fear and Hunger during his intro, and there he finds what remains of Nasra, who is now only a scorched husk, but can still communicate telepathically with Osa. This is the result of Nasra confronting the traces of Groguroth and has left him in his reduced state, as he is only an accessory in the second game. Ending C actually has two variations, depending on the dialogue choice you pick when meeting the potential final boss, but the method for getting here is the same for both endings. To achieve the C endings, you will need to find Lagard alive in his cell within the level 7 catacombs. This is no easy feat, as there is an in-game time limit of needing to reach his cell within 30 minutes of starting the game for him to be alive. Note, this doesn't count time in the pause menu, but it is still very challenging for new players, as the map layout of the dungeons can be very confusing. The best ways of doing this are to make sure you get dash in your character intro, and then either rush the normal way by going through the mines, using an explosive vial in the backyard to make your way down the thicket, or acquiring the leg sweep skill at a Hexen as Darce, and using it to destroy the door in the prisons. Once Lagard is in your party, you will need to make your way to the Golden Temple in Mahabra, which is accessed by obtaining all of the new God Souls and defeating the Nameless Figurine. You then need to get the temple key from Francois in the present day, then fight him in the past version to get access to the Golden Throne. Interacting with the throne with Lagard in your party will start a special cutscene where he reveals this was his plan all along, and he was faking the supposed amnesia he had. There is a prophecy in-game about a man with golden hair who is destined to unite the warring world, and Lagard aims to fulfill this prophecy by ascending to godhood and becoming the savior of humanity. Setting upon the throne, he transports away, and we can follow him, which takes us to the grand, empty world of the Void. This harsh, desolate area is home to many monstrous creatures, but after searching, we find Lagard, or at least what appears to be him. Talking with this person, he reveals he is no longer the Lagard we once knew, but has become the Yellow King, a new god that claims this was his ultimate purpose, to craft a paradise for humanity, and that he is our god and loves us. He gives us the option to kneel before him, and he will lead us out of the void, and it's this choice that determines the ending variation we will receive. For ending C1, the Yellow King, you must reject him as a god, which will initiate a battle. After defeating the Yellow King, we see him die as his blood slowly spills before our characters wake up outside of the dungeons. They are caught between reality and a dream, not knowing if what they experienced was real or just their imagination. You run from the dark fortress as the hounds chase you, and despite escaping with your life, you are continuously haunted by disturbing nightmares that wake you up nightly as you feel the evil of the dungeons continuously looming over you. As time goes on, the dreams become more real as your sanity declines and you can't tell if you are in reality or a lucid dream. Then the horrifying realization hits you that you are fated to dwell in the dungeons forever despite escaping. This ending is very similar to Cahara's S ending, which we will discuss shortly, and we know it is non-canonical as Lagard shows up as the Yellow King in the second game. Speaking of which, ending C2, the prophecy, is achieved by kneeling to the Yellow King and accepting him as a god. By doing so, you are able to escape the dungeons, and in the coming years, a mysterious figure emerges into the world, claiming to be the leader of the Knights of the Midnight Sun, Lagard. It seems as if the gods were on his side, as he was continuously successful and rose to be called the Yellow King by the populace. He united the Western world into a prosperous nation, the likes of which had never been seen before. After decades, you were able to set eyes upon the figure and realize he was the Lagard you once knew, but had ascended to godhood and had sickly yellow skin from the years he spent in the green hue of the void. This ending is perplexing, as it is partially canonical, and by talking to August on the evening of Day 2 in Fear and Hunger 2, he gives us the full story. Lagard does indeed emerge from the void as the Yellow King. However, due to the god of fear and hunger being created, the world he returned to had found their own way to adapt and evolve into a prosperous, more advanced age. no longer needing Lagarde to be their savior. This caused him to slowly spiral into madness, as his purpose and prophecy lost their meaning, and the Yellow King grew to become the violent Kaiser we see in the second game. Not being able to rest until he felt his prophecy was fulfilled, the Kaiser sought to find a way to create a whole new world for humanity that wasn't affected by the ways of the old gods, which he seeks in the form of the machine god Logic. We will explore this in more depth shortly when we talk about Darce's S ending. Ending D, a new god, follows the exact same path of ending C, except you will need to not have Lagarde in your party when you set upon the Golden Throne. Doing so will transport you to the Void, where in the place of where Lagarde stood, you will find a new god version of the main character. This version is the ascended form of your character, and it will speak about their desires and the nature of their soul as you usurp a new god title of the ones we felt in Mahavra: the Tormented Soul for Ragnvaldr, the Enlightened Soul for Enki, the Dominating Soul for Darce, and the Endless Soul for Cahara. We then go on to decide how we will go about our reign as a new god, and how we will influence humanity. There are a few branching dialogue paths, as humanity will come to worship you or destroy you based on your choices. But regardless, in the end, we learn we never left the dungeons of fear and hunger, and chose the eternal void and darkness as a new god. We know this ending isn't canonical, as there aren't any records of a new god influencing humanity after the creation of the god of fear and hunger, and there are 2 points in the second game where we travel to the Hall of the Gods, where the new gods forced to spend eternity after their reign. None of the main character new god versions are there. Ending E, Escape, is what I would call the novelty ending of the game, as it's more of a punishment on the player for trying to leave the dungeons and doesn't provide an actual ending. To get this, you will need to find Lagarde dead in his cell, which will give you the on-screen text of your task in the dungeons is done. There is little to no reason in staying here any longer. This means you are now able to walk out of the fog in front of the main entrance of the dungeon and are free to leave. Doing so gives us the typical end screen of Fear and Hunger, where the players look back at the dungeon. We are told even after escaping the dungeons, we can't believe we are able to do so, and we are still able to smell the blood and gore of the fortress and the eyes of the hundreds of dead warriors that reside there. This is the same initial text we get in ending C1, but we are then told we delve too deep, and in our arrogance, we take one last glance back at the dungeons to make sure we really did escape. However, in this instance, the entrance materializes before us as a guard stares us down with bloodlust. As I have said, this is more of a way to punish any escapee players, and nothing in it would provide any canon details. Cahara's S ending, ironically named Happy Ending, is achieved by purchasing the first 2 treasure maps from Isaiah, finding the treasure, then defeating him to receive the 3rd treasure map. After getting the King's Passage key and digging up the 3rd treasure chest, you will find the King's Crown, which is a priceless treasure and more than enough money to secure a wealthy life for anyone who can sell it. Cahara does just that after escaping the dungeon and goes on to live a life of luxury with Celeste and their child, who we find she is pregnant with in Cahara's Endless Dream flashback. However, as with ending C1 and E, the darkness and horrors of the dungeon still haunt Cahara as he is unable to live comfortably, still feeling the evil of the dungeon in both his dreams and waking life, giving him a bittersweet ending. This ending isn't believed to be canonical, as we don't see any mention of Cahara and his fate in Fear and Hunger 2, and it is most likely he was the one who led the girl to the gauntlet in ending A, where he perished after the god of fear and hunger was born. The most common question is, why would Cahara escort the girl when he only seems to be interested in his own fortune and well-being? As we see, he will steal from the party when first encountered. There are actually a couple logical reasons as to why Cahara would have helped the girl. The first, as we see in Cahara's flashback, is that he actually does care for others, as is the case with his pregnant lover Celeste. She is his main motivator for going to the dungeons in order to get Lagarde's bounty so he can save her from her life of being a harlot and secure a wealthy life for them and his unborn child. This caring side of his may have resonated with seeing the helpless girl, as he himself is about to be a father. Nilvan specifically asked the party to escort her daughter, the girl, to the bottom of the gauntlet. Going off of this, the second reason is due to Nilvan being the one asking, as Cahara and her possess the same endless soul type, which may have allowed Nilvan to resonate with Cahara on a deeper level. Enki, the Dark Priest's ending, the Enlightenment, shows him resisting the false path of ascension that the new gods have made by instead following in the footsteps of the mysterious Nasraemus to become truly enlightened. To achieve this ending, you will need to defeat Valtiel in the past version of Mahabra, then speak with him in the present day. Here, he will reflect on his foolish ways and tells of the true path to ascension. You then need to go to Nasraemus' secret room in the mines, past the salmon snake, and speak with him, where he will advise you on the real enlightenment and gives you the spirit anchor accessory, which allows you to resist the temptations of new godhood. You then need to go to the void, like in ending D, and face the new god version of yourself. However, with the spirit anchor equipped, you can turn your back on the false power of becoming a new god and instead learn from this experience. The knowledge gained causes Enki to go to the Grand Library to seek what he wants, where he finds countless books holding untold knowledge and the truths of the world. Here he learns the secrets of prolonged life, giving him plenty of time to scour the bookshelves and absorb what remained hidden to the rest of the world. This ending is confirmed canonical, as the skin Bibles we get to learn about the old and ascended gods in Fear and Hunger 2 are written by Enki, and we even see him holding a skin Bible in his ending art. With his life being prolonged, it's safe to say Enki is very much still alive during the events of the second game, as his predecessor Nasraemus is over 700 years old when we meet him. Darce's ending, the true god of fear and hunger, results from her finding Lagard dead in his cell, but striving to find a way to bring her lover back. By visiting the ancient city of Mahabra, Darce finds 3 torn instructions to a powerful Sylvian spell called Rebirth of the Beloved, which she uses to revive Lagard. As we see, this dark spell requires her to use her own blood as a medium, but much to her horror, the version of Lagard that comes back isn't the man she set out to rescue. The ending tells us how the revived Lagard resembles a bloodthirsty ghoul, becoming a warlord and unleashing the terror and suffering he experienced on the outside world. Despite this, Darce stays by his side, blinded by the unwavering love she feels for him and hoping he will someday just be hers. Many consider this to be a canonical ending, and that the Kaiser version of Lagard we meet in the second game is actually the revived version of Lagard that went on to sit on the Golden Throne and became a new god. However, after analyzing Fear and Hunger 2 Termina and what concrete information we are given, I don't believe this ending to be canonical at all, and will show you why the Kaiser is actually Lagard from ending C, who ascended to become the Yellow King as a human. To break this down, the 2 main reasons people believe this to be a canonical ending is due to the Kaiser's violent actions of starting the Second Great War, and how in our fight against the Kaiser, we can use the Rot spell to melt away his skin to reveal a bloody ghoul beneath. However, there is quite a bit of information we learn that contradicts this, mainly given to us by August and Nasra as the beheaded wizard. For the first point, we learn that the Kaiser isn't inherently violent and bloodthirsty, but that his inhuman actions are the result of him feeling his prophecy to save humanity was robbed from him. This is confirmed by August, who will recount how the Yellow King grew to become a violent dictator when you speak with him at his camp on the evening of day 2. He confirms how the prophecy was for Lagard to unite humanity and bring them into a new age and away from the suffering they were experiencing. But the creation of the god of fear and hunger caused humanity to evolve and adapt, pushing themselves forward into the modern age all on their own. As a result, when the Yellow King came out of the void many years after his ascension, he was ready to be a benevolent savior, but discovered the world no longer needed him to save them. As his pursuits became meaningless, he slowly became mad and was known as the Yellow King of Madness, and his frustrations gave way to acts of hostility as he couldn't rest until he felt his prophecy and purpose were fulfilled. Even though he took control of the Bremen Empire and started the Second Great War as a result, it was so he could take control of Perhevel and the Logic Project. As we see, he called a ceasefire as soon as the city was under his control. Even the Kaiser we see in-game doesn't needlessly seek out violence, and only attacks Pav and August after they shoot him, and only starts the battle with us after we seek to prematurely interfere with the machine god. Looking at the dialogue of Darce's ending, it says how the resurrected version of Lagard already thought himself to be a god and was naturally violent and bloodthirsty, wanting to unleash his suffering onto the world. This contradicts what we see of the Yellow King, as while he does cause suffering to many, it is done so that he may achieve his means to create a world that isn't affected by the old gods, bringing humanity and an end of salvation by twisted means, and isn't done out of his pure want to cause torment to humanity. Additionally, if you confront the Kaiser as Osa, Nasra will have a unique conversation with him. The Kaiser reflects on his past decisions, telling Nasra he was right about his ascension upon the Golden Throne wouldn't give him the purpose he sought, and that his ego misled him into thinking he could become a god and the true savior of humanity. This references the scene in the first Fear and Hunger where Nasra advises Lagard against setting on the Golden Throne, a scene we specifically see with Lagard in his human form, and the evil, revived version of Lagard in Darce's S ending wouldn't have this level of awareness to reflect on his past actions. For the second point of the rot spell showing his body beneath his skin to be a bloody ghoul, similar to his form in Darce's S ending, this appearance is a red herring, and the true nature of his form can be deducted from information we receive in-game. After the battle with the Kaiser, we see him melt away into the floor, and if playing as Osa, Nasra will scold him for letting the Kaiser escape and not recognizing the blood ritual that he used, saying that Osa should have known what was happening. This shows the spell the Kaiser used should have been known by yellow mages, who are practitioners of blood magic, channeled by Grogoroth, and we actually see a similar spell in-game through Marina's father, the Dark Priest Father Domek. After Saint-Marie stabs him, he melts away into the church floor, and after traveling to the rare dimension in the church's basement, we see his true form is that of a twisted flesh pillar that has been united with the church itself. Examining it with Marina in the party will reveal she has heard of this blood magic, which is used by old-school dark priests to prolong their lives by binding themselves to an object, building, or item, and it makes sense that the Kaiser, who was willing to enact any rash means in order to achieve his ends, would have used a similar spell to bind himself close to logic and ensure he could survive to see his plan fulfilled. This means the Kaiser we face isn't his true body, but a projection he was controlling remotely, and the bloody ghoul appearance beneath his skin makes sense due to it being a blood magic spell, and this form being like a blood golem version of himself. With this being the case, then what was the fate of Darce? There is a fun fan theory that Darce is actually the Sylvian trooper we see in the white bunker alongside the platoon, having found magic that prolonged her life. However, in addition to the above reasons we have outlined that Darce didn't bring Lagard back from the dead, the platoon and Sylvian trooper were actually fan art designed by Vlad Story that was the winner of a monster design contest in the Fear and Hunger Discord, and these creatures weren't originally planned by the creator. Unfortunately, Darce most likely met a dismal end in the dungeons due to her unwavering love and desire for Lagard. Seeing him abandon her to ascend on the Golden Throne would have left her in despair, either causing her to perish to the beasts of the dungeons, or follow Lagard into the void, where she ultimately fell to the harsh environment and monsters within. The final ending we will be looking at is Ragnvaldr's S ending, the god of ultraviolence. Upon arriving to the dungeons, Ragnvaldr discovers Lagard, the man who massacred his family and village, is already dead, so he resolves to get the Cube of the Depths and acquire the soul of every dark creature within the dungeons within a soul stone. These are the Crow Mauler, Iron Shakespeare, Cave Mother, Butterfly, Black Witch, Salmon Snake, White Angel, Old Guardian, as well as the new gods within Mahabra, these being the Tormented One, Valtiel the Enlightened One, Francois the Dominating One, and Nilvan the Endless One, which is obtained by beating the Skin Granny. Upon retrieving all of the souls, you will be able to leave the dungeons, where we learn Ragnvaldr went on to dedicate his life to destroying dark creatures around the world, which earned him the title, the God of Ultraviolence. In his S-ending art, we see him stabbing an Enki torso, which we can encounter in the second game. Ragnvaldr's S-ending is mostly canonical, as we meet Ragnvaldr's descendant, August, who is one of the contestants in the Termina Festival. This shows that Ragnvaldr's duty of monster slaying was passed down through his family, as August comes to the city of Brehevel, where Termina takes place, in order to hunt down and destroy the Kaiser, who is the Yellow King. We also learn the vast majority of monsters are no longer within the world. However, there are a couple caveats to this ending we can glean from the events of the second game. The first is that Ragnvaldr took Moonless the Cable with him from the dungeons, as she appears as a boss encounter in the second game, albeit much larger. And after our fight with Moonless, August intervenes to stop her and tells us she is an old family friend of his. The second is that Ragnvaldr didn't find Lagard dead in the dungeons. The evidence for this comes from what we discussed in regard to Darce's S ending, as well as the fact that August came to hunt the Kaiser down. If you reach the Kaiser in the White Bunker on the first day of the festival, August will appear and shoot him with 3 magical green arrows, saying the Kaiser should recognize these arrows and that this is a long time coming. If Ragnvaldr believed Lagard was dead, there wouldn't be a reason for his family to be hunting down the Kaiser, who didn't appear in the world until many decades after Ragnvaldr would have passed, much less planning on it for centuries. August is also very knowledgeable on the events of Lagard and his ascension to the Yellow King, information no one else in the game knows about, save for Nasra. Due to this, it would seem that Ragnvaldr arrived later to the dungeons, but still found out about Lagard ascending, and then spent time plotting revenge through his generations, searching for a means to damaging and defeating the new god. As we look at the many endings of Fear and Hunger, a picture starts to develop which tells us the story of the 350 years between the two games and how the multiple canonical endings affected one another to give us the timeline at the start of the second game. As the god of Fear and Hunger was born from the girl who was escorted to the depths by Cahara the mercenary, where he ultimately perished, Lagard made his way to the Golden Throne to ascend to the level of new god and fulfill his prophecy, not taking the forewarnings of Nasra. Around the same time, Enki and Ragnvaldr made their journeys through the dungeon. Enki met with and learned of true enlightenment from Nasramus, allowing him to resist the path to new godhood and instead learn of the world's secrets in the Grand Library, where he wrote the famous skin Bibles about the gods and where he most likely still remains to this day. Ragnvaldr, who didn't find the one he swore vengeance on, and learning of his ascension, possibly from Nasra, took it upon himself to destroy all of the evil beings within the dungeon and throughout the world while he plotted on how to destroy Lagard once he re-emerged into the world, and passed this duty down his bloodline. Nasra then went on to eventually meet with the traces of Grogaroth, who scorched him and left him in his current reduced state, where he was found hundreds of years later by Osa. As Lagard left the green hue of the void to return to the world as the Yellow King, he found humanity no longer needed him as their savior, as mankind had spurned itself forward thanks to the god of Fear and Hunger. Left to despair, the Yellow King slowly grew mad as his grand prophecy and purpose were left unfulfilled, leading to his growing hostility and violence as he sought any means necessary to achieve his so-called divine ends. As he grew to become the Kaiser of the Bremen Empire, he started the Second Great War, resulting in large-scale destruction and bloodshed as he and his army made its way to the seemingly unimportant city of Brehevel. Upon securing the city, the Kaiser called a ceasefire and ended the war as he had his prize, but unbeknownst to both him and the 14 train passengers whose ill fate had brought them to the city, events of cosmically horrific proportions were to play out over the next 3 days. I'd like to give a special shout out to the Omni World channel members. As always, please be sure to like and subscribe for weekly Fia and Hunger lore videos.